What do you need for night vision and thermal optics? Well, I've got Kevin Rought from ATN Pro-Staff right here. All right, welcome in, Gun Talk Hunters. I hope you are doing well, and hunting seasons are upon us, but gives us a great opportunity to talk about gear and tactics. Today with me, I've got Kevin. How do you pronounce your name? Like Rought?
Yeah, wrought like wrought iron.
Oh, like just like wrought iron, but he is would you call yourself a pro staff member with ATN?
Yeah, pro staff or brand ambassador.
Brand ambassador. That's all that's often used, right? Well, we can stick with you're a pro staff member. I mean, you pretty much utilize their stuff day in and day out. But we just want to give a special shout out to our brought to you by, hey, this one's brought to you by Silencer Central, which is silence delivered. Thank you, Silencer Central. We love using your products because um they can't hear where the shot's coming from, and it often confuses them. Kevin, you do much hunting with suppressors?
Absolutely. I got into the suppressor game as soon as they became legal here in Michigan. We actually had to wait. They made them legal in Michigan, and then it took about another year, year and a half before they made it legal for us to hunt with them. But yeah, as soon as they were legal in Michigan, I picked up a suppressor. Now I have two, and I have another one in NFA jail right now. I'm waiting on.
Isn't that the way that's kind of the way it always goes. Like it frustrates me that they don't see the value in it. I guess it's just bureaucracies and them denying a right. And especially one that honestly, I mean, if man, it just seems it's just right. I'll never hunt without a suppressor, I'll tell you that much.
I completely agree. I tend to look at the guns now that I have that are set up with suppressors, thinking, that's the only ones I'm going to hunt with. And I've had friends that have hunted with me that didn't really understand the hype behind them, but once they hunted with me and actually experienced it, a lot of them have suppressors now.
Yeah, I mean, the weights are getting down to, which is great. I've still got a couple out there though, doing the e-forms process that have been quite a while. So it's not a completely refined system yet. They're still working through it. But man, it is sure nice to hunt with them just because I mean, it's so comfortable not having to have ear pro on, or if you forget your ear pro, that's when you run into a sounder of hogs that's 20 or 30 deep, and you got to take as many as you want out, right?
Yep. Yeah.
So
And it's great for your partners too, when you're hunting with other guys.
yeah, they don't have these big beefy muzzle brakes on the end of them that'll just ring everybody out.
Right.
So Kevin, give me an idea of kind of how you became a ATN Pro staff member and what all that entails.
Sure. I've been a pro staff member with ATN since September of 2019. Um, I've been using their products though for significantly longer than that, and I like the products enough that I looked at their pro staff program and I sent in an application for it. They take quite a bit of time to research all the people that join their staff, so I had to wait for that time. Then we had to go through a training process. In terms of what staff means, obviously it means being a brand ambassador for their products, helping customers with any technical issues they may have or support issues when we can, providing content for them, and then doing things like, we go to SHOT Show and we work the booth at SHOT Show and different events like that.
Well, I mean, it's a good gig to be a part of because it seems like almost, I mean, everything that ATN has come out with lately has been a home run. I know my favorite, which I mean, it might be one of your favorites, but the Thor 4 has been very high on my list lately, and just utilizing that in the field. I mean, I don't think it's overweight. I think it balances out a good AR, a good AR really well.
Mhm.
Because honestly, a lot of the shots either come off of a tripod or they're going to come off of offhand, and I like a little bit of weight on top of that rifle.
Yeah, I agree. Thor 4 right now is, one of the guns I probably use most often for predator hunting. And I couldn't agree more. I mean, thermal in general is a game changer when it comes to nighttime hunting. There's no doubt about it. Night vision and thermal each have their own, pluses and minuses, but the Thor 4 is definitely one of my favorites.
So Kevin, educate me a little bit on Michigan because I haven't done a whole lot of hunting up in Michigan. I know you guys got bears. I know you guys got the whitetails. What does night hunting look like for a Michigan guy?
For predators, coyote hunting is year round, 24/7, 365. That used to be we could only use rimfire or shotgun at night for predators,
Okay.
and we were limited to no buckshot at night. I was part of a group that we actually lobbied the DNR, and we got that changed to now we can use, depending on which part of the state we're in. We're actually broke into two zones. There's the northern zone, and then there's the lower zone, which is called the limited rifle zone. In that zone, you can only use straight walled cartridges for deer.
Okay.
So they actually kept some of the rules different for that part of the state for nighttime predator hunting. I'm in the northern zone, and at night we can use any center fire cartridge with up to a .269 diameter projectile, anywhere except for state parks and recreation areas. Down in that limited rifle zone, it's only on private land that you can use center fire. The rest of the areas are still rim fire or shotgun. Um, like I said, coyote season open 24/7, 365. Our fox season runs from the middle of October through, I believe it's April.
Okay.
And we have a very short bobcat season, which only runs from January 1st. They just extended it this year. Now it goes to January 20th. We have coyote, red fox, gray fox, and bobcats are the primary predators that we can hunt. Up in the UP and some areas in the northern lower, we do have wolves, but we've only had one wolf season so far. And the politicians shut that down shortly after we had the one season.
Really? How many wolves were taken out?
You know, they had a goal, if I remember right, of around 46 wolves was their target to be taken out. And they actually had the season started November 15th, which is coincidentally opening day of deer season, and it went
Right.
all the way through January 1st. It was daytime hunting only, no trapping. And they had, I want to say there was about 6 different zones that you could hunt, and each one had its own quota. So every day you had to call into the DNR to see if that quota was filled for that area that you wanted to hunt. If it was filled, then obviously you couldn't hunt that area anymore. That being said, they didn't even fill half of their quota. I want to say they ended up only taking like 16 wolves.
Really? And they shut
Yeah.
it down that quick?
Well, they didn't shut it down. That went through, well, the politicians did, yes.
Right.
Yeah, yeah. They shut it down. They got them put under federal protection for the tri-state area. The DNR actually passed a law saying that they could set a season once those restrictions were lifted based on sound science for a wolf management plan. So they had the federal restrictions lifted, but then again, I mean, it was just last year they got them put back under federal protection again before we even got a chance for another
Yeah.
season.
That's brutal. Politicians sticking their nose in where it's not needed.
And it's,
We know what the wolves do.
yeah,
The elk in Colorado, they're going to push elk out of Colorado.
right.
That's what's scary about it.
Yeah, we hunt up on the Upper Peninsula usually once or twice a year, and we do some predator management hunting on cattle farms up there. And we hear from the landowners, you know, what's going on with the wolves between primarily livestock, but also the deer herd. So, I mean, the people in the Upper Peninsula, for the most part, were 100% in support of having a wolf season because they have to deal with them. Unfortunately, the voting majority is in the lower part of the state where
Right.
they don't have to deal with wolves.
Yeah, that's the big populaces make the rules for the rest of us, I guess, is kind of how it ends up going, unfortunately. So you don't have the joy of feral hogs yet, huh?
We do not. They claim that there are some feral hogs and they're primarily escaped domestic hogs. I have yet to see one.
Yeah.
And every now and then you'll hear of someone getting one on game camera, but we really don't know. Nothing
Well,
that I've been able to hunt.
you guys have such big timber down there. It'd be tough to see them unless it was, winter or something like that, where you
Right.
can really kind of check them and move them.
Yeah.
Hey, lucky you. Like it's a big problem. When I'm out in Oklahoma hunting whitetail, anytime, hogs show up, it all of a sudden turns into a hog hunt, unfortunately. But they run some deer out of some areas, some areas that I've set aside for youth hunting and stuff like that. They'll just run them out. I mean,
Is there
the deer they just don't want anything to do with them.
is there a good population of them in Oklahoma? I guess I've never heard of
Oh,
Oklahoma having an issue with them.
oh yeah. Yeah, I mean, I came across last year, I came across a little group. I mean, it was like, I don't know, 7 or 8 hogs. And I was fortunate enough to get, 3 of them. And then later that day, I'm driving along and there's a group of about 30 or 40, so I mean, they're just everywhere and they're sporadic. But no, it's huge. It's a big problem because they're all coming up from Texas and I guess Kansas is starting to get them. But Kansas, I don't know, Michigan did this, but they outlawed the hunting of feral hogs in Kansas, from what I was told and for what I've seen. But what that did essentially is that stopped anybody from bringing them inside the state, to hunt them, to have a huntable population on a high fence or something like that. And then they get out, and that's how a lot of these things kind of start happening in states that really don't have them. So I don't think Kansas is overrun with them just yet. Um, You'll have bands of them moving throughout an area, I guess, but man, they just haven't, set up residency there for the most part.
Yeah, now that you mention that, we do have several big game ranches in Michigan, and it used to be they would have Russian boars. Now they're not allowed to have the Russian boars. So any pigs that are on these ranches are domestic that are just let to free range. And I think that's the
So if
reason.
you go up there, you could hunt them, right? Like,
Yeah,
I mean, essentially,
yeah,
um, just since they're on there. But I think there's something to that. I think that's a good idea. So people don't like go, oh man, I've got 60 acres over here. I'm going to high fence it and just let, someone come in and lay waste to some hogs. And all of a sudden you got a hole in your fence and then you got a problem.
right.
But
Absolutely.
yeah. So let's get back to the night hunting thing and what you're using the Thor for, because um I would guess that in primarily you'd probably be setting up your night hunting sets, coyote call. Are you guys allowed to call at night?
Yes. Calling is a primary method for most people in the state. We don't have any restrictions on optics that we can use. Lights are legal, night vision is legal, thermal is
Wow.
legal. So there's no restrictions on optics, which is great because it leaves everything wide open for you.
Yeah. Well, that's nice. Real quick on the backside of this, I want to come to get it some of your strategies for predator hunting at night, but I'm going to jump in here real quick from a word from our sponsors. This gun talk hunt comes to you from the fine folks at Sig Sauer. They have a cross. I love it. I've got one. One of my favorite things about that rifle is it's lightweight and ready to go. I can fold it down, strap it to a pack. So for all you backcountry hunters like I am, something agile is very important, especially when I'm counting ounces. It's extremely important because it's only 6.5 pounds. That's super lightweight. But 308 2776 Fury and a 6.5 Creedmoor available in 18-inch barrel, or the other two come in 16-inch barrels if you want to get a little bit shorter on that end. But it's all designed and built here in the USA, and you can find out more at sigsauer.com. And Silencer Central, silence delivered is their motto, and they definitely deliver the goods right to your door. So if you're sitting here and you're thinking, you know what, I probably should get a suppressor, silencer, whatever you want to call it. I'm not here to judge, but I'm going to say it suppresses the sound instead of silences it. So that's my humble opinion. But what Silencer Central does is it's really cool. They send you out the kit. So you go on, you buy your silencer, suppressor, and they send you everything needed to complete your trust, fingerprints, and then you take a picture of yourself with your cell phone. Very easy. Then they follow up with you, get the final information, and then you sit back and wait. Okay, what's going to happen? You're going to be really excited that you got it all done, first of all, from the comforts of your home. And in about a month, you're going to forget about it. And then all of a sudden, in about, I don't know, 90 more days or so, suppressor is going to show up to your door. And you're going to go, woohoo, look at me. I got a suppressor. And they're going to go out and use it. And you're going to be glad you waited. So jump in there at silencercentral.com to learn more. All right, we're back with Kevin Rought. He's an ATN Pro staff member. And Michigan. And I had to ask Michael, what do they call folks from Michigan?
Michiganders.
Michiganders. That's it. That's it. I got it from both ends. But unless you wait, hold on a second. But unless you're from the Upper Peninsula, then you're a Youper, right?
Yep.
See, I know something. But no, let's talk about like your calling strategies and what terrain you look for when calling big timber, because that's really what you're doing a lot of, I imagine.
The area around where I'm at tends to have kind of probably a 50-50
Okay.
mix of farmland and timber. We have a lot of waterways here in Michigan. I think in Michigan, you're never more than like a mile and a half away from a lake, river, or stream. So when I'm going out, I have hunted in the woods, and thermal obviously is king for that.
Yeah.
But a lot of times what I'm hunting is private land that is usually small fields. When I say small, I mean probably about the biggest crop field in general that I have in my area is maybe, 20, 30, 40 acres.
Okay.
Right around me, there's not a lot of real big farm fields. So what I'm looking for is those edges where it transitions from the field to the wood line. On dark nights, if we don't have a full moon or we got good cloud cover, a lot of times I'm going to go out into the open part of that field. If we have, like in the wintertime, we have a lot of snow, we have a bright moon, then what I usually do is hug those wood lines or try and
Yeah.
find something to break up my silhouette. Then it's mainly a question of, making sure the wind is right for your call setup. Um, Coyotes like to go to the downwind side. Fox and bobcat not so much, but coyotes definitely do. So you want to make sure that your wind's not blowing to where you think they're going to be when you go in and set up, and you want to be able to shoot to that downwind side.
Yeah, because inevitably they always find a way into the back door of it, right?
Right. Yep.
I always hate that. And it's funny because when you're hunting bobcats, I always find that they'll just sit there and watch and wait. Like they just kind of sit and they're just watching and
Yep.
waiting and just
I honestly think that's why a lot of people, I mean, we're only allowed one bobcat a year down here. If you want to go to the UP, you can get a second one. So really you can get two per year, but you'd have to travel the UP to do that, like I
yeah.
said. So I don't think we have the numbers like they do down in like Texas and such like that for cats. And I think that's why a lot of people aren't successful with bobcats, because if you look at the terrain we have with all the big timber, the grass, the crops, everything else, like you said, I mean, I call in a lot of bobcats every year. Most of them are when it's not in season, of course,
Yeah.
but that's what you see them do. You see them come to the edge where they can see the source of the sound, and then they just sit down and look. And I just don't think people pick up on seeing them when they
Right.
do.
Well, and that's the great thing. Like, so if you're thinking about, night vision and hunting at night, that's where thermal comes in. It comes in huge. I mean, it will pay itself off,
Right.
because they can't hide.
But even during the daytime, because here in
Yeah.
Michigan, we can't hunt bobcats at night. It's another weird rule that they have. So we can only hunt them in the daytime.
Yeah.
But even in the daytime, if you have, if you're transitioning from like say a field to swamp grass, it's all the same coloration. Bobcats are almost the same color as well. If you use thermal
Yeah.
during the day, you're going to be able to even spot one that's sitting in that grass line looking that you might not have been able to see with the naked eye.
Yeah. And what you're going to end up doing is you're going to take the thermal off and you're going to look at that spot of grass. Then you're going to go back to the thermal and you're like, I know, like the heat signature never lies.
Right.
He's there.
Yep.
I promise. That's funny because I mean that's happened to me multiple times where like I'll get up from a set and I'll see a cat run off and I'm like, he was right there the whole time.
And that's frustrating.
Oh my gosh, yeah, it's frustrating. It's horrible. You feel like such a goof. Like it's just you're like, man, I messed that setup. but you
Yep.
didn't. You did everything right. It
Right.
was just the cat waiting to pounce is pretty much what it chalks up to be.
Yep.
So where do you land with your setup? Because you got, even if you're, I'm sorry if you're listening to this over the airwaves or your selected podcast listening app, you're not going to get to see it, but he's got a beautiful, looks like an AR. It looks like an AR in the background, and it's outfitted, maybe a Thor. But what's your preferred setup when heading out at night?
My two primary setups that I have, one is the rifle behind me you just referenced. That's a 204 AR-15. That one's
Yeah.
actually topped with a 4K. And then my second one is the 6.5 Grendel with topped off with a Thor 4. Those are my two primary setups that I use right now.
So the 6.5 Grendels when you're extra mad at them.
You know, I've taken so much game with that 6.5 Grendel, it's not even funny. We've hunted hogs down in Louisiana. I've used it on antelope. I've used it on deer. I've used it on, coyote, fox, bobcat. It just works well on almost everything. And I mean, the only time in prime fur season, I'll tend to go to the 204 a little bit more if I'm targeting fox,
Yeah.
because the 6.5 Grendel is pretty hard on fox. But that being said, I've taken two bobcats with it as well, and it was actually very fur friendly on the bobcats.
Really?
Yeah, I'm using the
Just
90 grain Barmageddon and didn't even have exits. So it
oh
worked great.
wow, that's impressive. That's good setup. So on your 4K, are you what external IR light are you using? Are you using an IR light
Yes,
in conjunction?
I use the Night Snipe NS750 infrared illuminator,
Okay.
and
That's a
I don't
that's a
have it
nice
on me
setup.
right now, but I have it mounted below on the handguard in front.
Yeah, it's got a pretty good throw on it if I remember right.
Yeah, I did a video for them with mine and was looking at buildings out to like 600 yards, 700 yards.
No kidding.
Mhm.
Man, it's a nice little addition if you're especially if you're looking at, just extending your ranges because I think that's the knock that you get most of the time when you're talking about night vision versus, like a thermal setup is
Mhm.
that and it's not that you can identify so much longer or further with thermal. It's just you see those little heat signatures that may or may not be,
Right.
you know,
Yeah. With the
and that's
infrared, as you know, you have to look for that eye shine a lot of times, especially if it's out there a little bit. With that thermal, you don't have to worry about that.
yeah, I know, man. It's having experienced thermal, it's hard for me to get away from it. So give me an instance where you would always select uh night vision over thermal.
We were talking about this the other day, and I think Michigan and some of the other states right around Michigan, this tends to be more of a situation you'd run into than other states. And that's when you're hunting around semi-urban areas and you have the likelihood of having a domestic cat come in, a dog, something that you would want to have better positive identification for. Now, when you're myself, I consider myself to be experienced enough that in thermal, I can identify what I'm looking at. A newer hunter, if they've never looked through thermal before and they don't know how the animals move from one to the other, night vision is going to give you a better positive identification.
Yeah. That reminds me of a story I had. I forget who was telling me this, but he was telling me maybe it was Steve Lemonov of ATN. Maybe he was telling me that they were looking through a thermal and they were in a heavily wooded area, and all of a sudden they notice a cat coming towards them, and they're like, "Oh my goodness!" And your depth perception does get off when you're looking at through thermal. At least it does for me.
Mhm.
And this kind of happened, and he's like, "Oh my gosh, the cat has a long tail." They thought like dead to rights that sucker was just a mountain lion coming in, and turns out, the cat was actually, like 40 or 50 yards away, and it was a house cat
Yep,
coming into, they didn't pull the trigger, obviously, but
right,
it was just funny because they were all convinced like they were going to have to shoot in self-defense.
right. Yeah, especially like I said, I think it's more of a factor for newer hunters. Experienced people, I don't think it's usually too big of an issue making that identification, but it could definitely be an issue for somebody.
Yeah. And just, I mean, just understanding the heat signatures, because we'll get a lot of people who are unsure whether it's a, it's a whitetail or a deer or a cow out in the field or something like that, or maybe it's you've got a lot of 2-year-old calves out in the field, and they're like, oh my gosh, there's a lot of hogs in this field, and it's just about like reading, like, no, understanding anatomy and translating that into your thermal.
Right. Well, also, especially because we have closed season here on fox and bobcats, you got to make sure that you're not looking at a fox versus a coyote pup,
Right.
for example. And then that's one of the things that was debated heavily on getting the center fire legalized in Michigan, was for people up in the UP making sure there wasn't a confusion between a wolf pup and a coyote.
Mm, yeah. I wouldn't even have thought that.
Mhm.
That wouldn't even cross my mind. Wow. So let's talk about a little bit about like kind of daytime use of this stuff, because I think that's something that a lot of people think is that, thermal or the night vision that ATN offers is only used at night, and that's the only time they can get any benefit out of it. And if they're only going, you know, let's say I go night hunting 4 times a year, is it really worth the investment? Absolutely, because you can use it during the day too. So
Mhm.
you get double use out of it.
There's been a lot of times, one of my favorite types of setups to hunt is to go out to where I want to hunt, let's say an hour before dark. And sometimes we have sets where you might sit there for a couple hours. So I might be going from daylight into dark. When I do that, I have two different options. I can use a thermal, which there's straight transition. I mean, there's no difference really in thermal between day and nighttime. The other option is to go with a 4K with the infrared illuminator, and I have full color HD during the daytime when I use that. And then once night rolls in, I switch it to night vision mode, turn on my IR, and
Yeah.
keep rolling right into dark.
Man, I mean, that's the way to do it. And just to have that capability. And a lot of folks too, they kind of, well, it's battery operated, and I don't want to rely upon a battery operated system. These batteries are running unbelievable amounts of time now, like where you'll get all your hunts in.
Yeah, we used to, well, my first ATN optic was a first gen traditional night vision, and that ran off, I think they were the little like CR123 batteries.
Yeah.
Well, those didn't last real long, but it worked good for what I was using it for. From there, I stepped up to the Excite 2. Excite 2 again used 4 AA batteries. Now we went with Kentley rechargeable lithium batteries, and those gave
Right.
us 6 to 8 hour run time. Now I'm into the 4K and the Thor 4, and like you said, I mean, you're looking at 16 to 18 hours of runtime on a
Yeah.
single charge. So I
which
mean,
is which is crazy for me to think. Uh and I think ATN has like kind of the battery extension packs too, if I remember correctly.
for some products they do. Yeah,
Yeah.
you can plug in an external battery into the units if you want.
Yeah.
With the 16 to 18 hour battery life, I've never had much use for it. Like the new Odin handheld scanner that has an extended rechargeable battery pack available for it.
Yeah.
And so far, the performance on that's been really good as well.
Well, and that's another thing that folks need to look into too, are the monoculars and the handhelds, because that's where, man, that's 90% of my scouting, where legal, is done with that in
Oh, yeah.
mind. I mean, picking up travel corridors and just travel pattern, just patterning deer, is huge with that.
Oh, it's crazy this time of year, especially because, like I said, we hunt coyotes year round, and seeing the deer in velvet this time of year with that thermal is just, it's amazing sometimes because we're hunting private land and we'll see these deer. So we'll video it, which is another great aspect of
Yeah.
ATN products. We'll make a video of that and we'll send it to the landowner to show him, hey, you got some nice deer hanging
Yeah.
around on your property this year.
Well, I
And
mean, that's a good way to get in good graces with the landowners around there, I'm sure.
And not only that, but recovery. A
Yeah.
landowner goes out and shoots one, and we've had them say, "Man, I can't find it. Can you come out with your thermal and help us find this deer?" And
Yeah.
that's one of the things that we do is we go out and help them locate a down deer.
Yeah, I love it, man. It's all good stuff and all good strategies. Now, I've never looked through a thermal at a bear. How awesome is that? You got to tell me.
It is pretty cool. I bear hunt. We bear hunt up in the Upper Peninsula. And one thing you'll notice, especially being familiar with thermal, different parts of different animals are hotter, different. Like
Right.
deer, their legs tend to be really hot, their body's not so much, their head's hot. With coyotes, you really see their eyes and ears, their legs stick out.
Yeah.
With bear, the things that stick out the most is their nose and their ears and their
No
eyes.
kidding.
Body wise, they don't show up real strong like other animals because they have so much insulation on them.
Yeah.
But their nose and their eyes and ears will stick out pretty darn good.
Man, that's wild. That is just wild. Well, Kevin, man, thanks for joining me. And where can you go find out more about ATN and what you do? Can some people go give you a follow?
Yeah, either under my name on social media. I'm on most social media, Facebook, Instagram. Also, I'm part of a group called Overdrive Outdoors. We have a Facebook page, YouTube channel, all that as well. They can follow all our hunts along on there. Um, and yeah, pretty much most of those social media platforms.
All right, I'm doing it right now. So if you're doing it out there, go give him a follow. And that is Kevin Rought. That's all one word, right?
Yes, sir.
That's where I'm headed over to social media over on the Instagrams. And man, you got some cool shots on there. You guys go give him a follow. But Kevin, man, thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
And I'll check back in with you because I want to hear a little bit more. And maybe this is in a few months, but I'd love to chat with you about, kind of your wintertime tactics and what you're doing to prepare to hunt those long, cold nights.
Sure. Anytime.
All right, Kevin, I appreciate it. As always, gun talk hunters, you guys be safe out there and keep those muzzles pointed in a safe direction.